Hello, everybody. I'm Jessica Stevens. I'm here today from the Asia Education Foundation with my fantastic colleague, Farah, who I think you may know. And we're very pleased to have you here for a Australia-Indonesia Bridge School Partnerships Program Educator Workshop. The topic for this educator workshop is going to be exploring STEAM in Bridge, especially creative actions through citizen science. To kick us off today, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners upon which a lot of our Australian guests today will be meeting on. It's incredibly important to continue to show our utmost respect for the traditional owners of the land. I myself am on the Wurundjeri land of the Kulin Nation. As we join through these sessions for the next 2 weeks, I just want to make sure that you are all aware how very privileged we are that you're joining us today. It's such a great opportunity to bring us all together to discuss what we think is a really creative and engaging way for Bridge educators to continue their learning and also to involve students in your school partnership activities. For our special guest today, I would like to thank the representatives from the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade who are joining today. We continue to thank you for your support of the Bridge program, Bridge educators, and the Bridge school community. As I mentioned before, we do have the fantastic Farah here today. And just before I hand over, I wanted to give a bit of housekeeping for everybody. We are going to try throughout this educator workshop to try and make it as bilingual as possible. In the webinar in a few weeks, it will be live translated. But today, because we're trialing a new different type of technology, we're going to try a little bit of a different approach. So the majority of presentations today will be in English. There'll be some Bahasa Indonesia in it. However, where we change languages, please note that in the chat function on the YouTube page, you'll be able to see the live translation of the key points. So to explain that and to give another fantastic welcome to our Indonesian colleagues who are here today, I'd like to hand over to Farah.
Thank you, Jess. Selamat pagi Ibu dan Bapak Guru serta teman-teman siswa sekalian. Selamat datang di workshop Exploring STEAM in Bridge ini. Seperti yang sudah disampaikan oleh rekan saya Jess, workshop ini akan sebagian besar disampaikan dalam bahasa Inggris. Saya yakin Bapak Ibu dan teman-teman siswa sekalian semua fasih dalam berbahasa Inggris. Namun, bila membutuhkan klarifikasi dari kami, silahkan mengajukan pertanyaan atau komentar di kolom comments di layar Bapak Ibu sekalian. Di saat yang bersamaan, kami juga akan memberikan beberapa rangkuman poin-poin dalam bahasa Indonesia. Sekarang saya ingin mengundang rekan saya di IF, Brandon, selaku fasilitator utama event ini. For Brandon, my colleague as a main facilitator, I hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Farah, for those kind words, and thank you, Jessica, for the introduction. My name is Brendan from the Asia Education Foundation, and it's such a great privilege and honour to join you today from across Indonesia and Australia for what's a really unique and creative but also very important and timely program, Exploring STEAM in Bridge. Now, if we could get the slides up in a moment, that would be wonderful. Thank you. So as many of you would know through your participation in Bridge, one of the main aims of Bridge is the idea of school partnerships through purposeful collaborations. Now, if we look at the word STEM in its literal sense, we can think about this program more broadly. So the roots of this program are founded in expanding intercultural learning, amplifying youth voice, and also activating advocates, which we'll explain in more detail throughout this session. But the stems of that branch, or the pillars of this program, is the curriculum alignment, so science, technology, engineering, the arts, and mathematics, using the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals to guide our learning. Design thinking and those critical and creative thought processes, the idea of STEMpathy, which is combining STEM and empathy for a greater good and inventing things that have a real world purpose. And finally, the idea of digital technologies for collaboration. So to expand on the methodology and also the pedagogy, this is a great way to visualize how we'll be working together over the next couple of weeks. So we'll be looking at local and global challenges and also opportunities. So what are those links between Indonesia and Australia? And what are the combined actions that we can come up with? As I said, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and also the research and advocates that's taking place. We'll use the disciplinary skills and knowledge that's created through STEM, but also touch on some of the general capabilities, particularly things like intercultural understanding, personal and social responsibility, and that ethical understanding, as well as technology, numeracy, and critical and creative thinking. Then we'll introduce you to some design thinking processes and also digital technologies that we can collaborate across borders, across countries, and across schools. And then at the end of the program, we'll come up with an innovative, creative solution that we can work on as a school partnership, and we can use some of the ideas of STEMpathy to create a product that we can use in our schools and in our local and global communities. So as you'll know, there's many great things that come as a result of partnerships. This could be through education, this could be through science, and as Robbie is aware, it could be through being in a band and creating music. Some of those things are the new ideas, growth, innovation, and creativity. Collaboration, learning not just from each other, but with each other is really important. Having a diversity of thoughts and opinions. So looking at things differently to the way we perhaps typically would. The opportunity to leverage each other's resources and our shared strengths and understandings. That real sense of synergy, combined action, and a sense of local but also global community, and having a real purpose. So the audience and that feedback, being able to share and being able to compare our thoughts and our ideas and our opinions. So I'd like to share with you now a graphic from a Canadian professor by the name of Michael Fullan. Many of you might be aware with what has been around for many years in terms of the 4 Cs. In recent years, he's decided to add 2, which has become the 6 Cs. And the important ones that I guess relate closely to this program is citizenship and character education. So citizenship relates to ideas like sustainability, particularly for the environment, respect for other cultures, that global knowledge and involvement and intercultural understanding. And if you look at character education, things like respect, responsibility, and empathy. Of course, we'll also touch on many of the other points as well, such as creativity, the idea for leadership for action, communication, and it's really important, as we mentioned earlier, the idea of bilingual and those language skills, listening and writing, but also that digital element, collaboration, so working together in teams, be that schools or be that local community groups or some of our wonderful advocates, and also the idea of critical thinking. So being able to identify a problem, but then think critically to come up with a tangible and realistic solution. So partnerships are not just between people, they can also be between the curriculum and different learning strands of our school time. So based on the Australian curriculum, I've just pulled out a few key quotes that relate to some of the offerings that we'll be doing over the next couple of weeks. Again, around the idea of STEAM, so science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. So some of those key points that I've used to highlight are things like providing a context, so a real world example, the idea of observation and analysis, and most importantly, using the real world around you for your learning. So the world is our classroom. For technology, that concept of making connections, being able to come up with creative solutions. For engineering, it's about imagining, designing, and then creating. So once again, collaboration, communication, and also that concept of ethical considerations. The products that we're making, how are they enhancing or improving people's lives? We'll touch on the arts through music and visual arts. So how can students express and develop their worldviews? What are some of the things they might create and share through that? And mathematics, which is really important. Again, that concept of comparison. So using graphing, using surveys, how can we analyze our local ecosystems and come up with graphs and data? So another extremely important point for bridge programs and the work of the Asia Education Foundation is the idea of amplifying youth voice, so student voice and agency. And there's so many wonderful examples that I could have chosen from, but I've chosen today to use 3 different ones that are directly affected to our work. So in the first picture, you can see 2 young girls from Indonesia, Melita and Isabel, and they founded an organization called Bye Bye Plastic Bags when they were 10 and 12 years old, respectively. Now, the story goes that they were in a class at school and their teacher was teaching them about significant people in the world. So people like Nelson Mandela, Princess Diana, and Mahatma Gandhi. So they went home that day and they thought, what can we do for the lives of children in Bali to make a difference, just like these people have. And one of the issues they were really passionate about was the local environment, and particularly the use of single-use plastic and plastic bags. So they decided to create this project called No Plastic Bags, or Bye Bye Plastic Bags, which has since become a global phenomenon of youth empowerment, but also environmental activism. For those people joining us in Australia, another fine example is a 9-year-old student at the time by the name of Molly Steer, and she's located in Queensland. For her, her inspiration came about through watching a documentary called A Plastic Ocean. So when she was 9 years old, she decided that she wanted to stop plastic straws, another single-use plastic which was damaging the environment and animals. So the first step that she did is she approached her school canteen and she got them to eliminate single-use straws. Okay, she then took it wider and it became a local community project. So she was approaching things like bars and restaurants and clubs. And once again, just like Bye Bye Plastic Bags, what started in a school and in a local community has now had a worldwide effect. Finally, we have a school in Queensland, and at a recent AEF forum, they used design thinking processes to come up with an innovative solution. And what they've decided to do is create a upcycled shoe and turn it into a pot plant holder. So their idea was a lot of people are throwing out their clothes, and once they're finished, they just go into the garbage or to the landfill. So they were thinking a great way to repurpose these shoes is to use them as a pot plant, and then people, particularly with growing urbanization and a lot of people having smaller backyards or living in high-rise apartments, they don't have gardens, they could use a shoe to put a garden plant in there or a flower, and it's a great way to connect with nature but also save the environment at the same time. So there's just 3 really small examples of amplifying youth voice, and I look forward to seeing how we can amplify youth voice in our classrooms across Australia and Indonesia. So as I mentioned previously, the Sustainable Development Goals are a fantastic resource. So as many of you would know, there are 17 global goals, and these were established in the year 2015 by the United Nations with the targets to be reached by the year 2030, so just under a decade. Now, for this particular project, there'll be 4 that we'll be focusing on in more detail, which is clean water and sanitation, responsible consumption and production, climate action, and life below water. We'll elaborate these in coming weeks, but a great starting point is World's Greatest Lesson from the UN, which provides some great context and lessons around those 4 topics. So the idea that I wanted to explore briefly today is the idea of STEMpathy. So it's 2 words put together, STEM and empathy. And as you can see in the quote there, it's about embedding the human compassion and empathy into science, technology, engineering, the arts, of course, and mathematics. So that real human connection. And in the diagram, you can see there's a bunch of different student inventions. So these were all created by primary school, high school, or early university students. An example you can see is a young girl in India who created a washing machine which doesn't use any electricity or power, and it's simply pedal powered through a bicycle. The next one is an app. So a young university student, his grandfather had Alzheimer's and he was sleepwalking at night and he was injuring himself in many different ways. So this student came up with a sock which had a microchip in it, and every time it detected unusual movement, it would send an alarm to an app which would either wake up his grandfather or send it to his mother and father, who could then go and visit him. Another example is students in India didn't have access to bags or desks in some classrooms. So a student came up with this idea of a foldable backpack, which also folds out and becomes a desk. And in the very first one, we have some gloves. So this was using Auslan, so Australian Sign Language, and it was converting hand movements into text speech. So you could hear what the person was using the sign language for. So here you can see some ideas that are using STEM, but rather than just being kind of a one-off activities, they're inventions that create something that's more powerful in the community and, as I've said before, enhance people's lives. So one of the points of Bridge is about engaging advocates. So working in collaboration with organisations to enhance education outcomes for both teachers and, of course, students, and also give students some real-world learning opportunities. So throughout this program, we're very, very lucky to be joined by our partners in the CSIRO, Kopernik, and Palau Plastic. So I would like to introduce each member, who will briefly explain who they are, what they do, and also touch on the activity that they have designed specifically for this program that we can complete over the next 2 weeks. So I'll just briefly touch on some of my experience and why I'm so passionate about such a program. So as I mentioned, I'm the Education Programs Coordinator here at the Asia Education Foundation, based in Melbourne. And my background is in the arts. So I guess I bring the A into the STEAM acronym. So I was a teacher for about 10 years at a primary school. So along with music, I have a deep passion for student empowerment and the idea of global citizenship. So I thought I'd include this great quote from UNESCO. So challenges such as sustainable development, including climate change, are demonstrating the real need for cooperation and collaboration beyond simply land, air, water, and boundaries. For example, Australia and Indonesia. So continuing global challenges, they will call for our collective actions at a global level as well as at a local level. And to me, that sums up what Bridge offers through this wonderful program, and the idea of engaging advocates and connecting real-world learning to problems that exist in our local and global community. So with that in mind, I'd like to hand over now to Amelia, and she'll introduce what she does at the CSIRO.
Thanks, Brendan. Selamat pagi, Ibu dan Bapak Guru dan teman-teman siswa yang kami hormati. Saya Amelia, Direktur Badan Sains Nasional Australia untuk Indonesia. So, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Amelia. I'm CSIRO's Country Director for Indonesia, and CSIRO is Australia's national science agency, and we've been working with partners in Indonesia for over 40 years to solve some of the greatest challenges that our region faces. And marine plastic waste is one of those challenges, and so I thought I'd talk to you a little bit this afternoon, depending on what time zone you're in, about marine plastic waste and some of the work that we're doing with Indonesian partners, and then to talk to you a little bit about an activity that I think hopefully you and your students will find engaging and interesting. So marine plastic waste, as you know, is a significant challenge globally. Marine plastic waste comes from both land and sea-based sources, and it can travel immense distances. It can pose a navigation hazard, smother coral reefs, transport invasive species, and negatively affect tourism. There's nothing more distracting to somebody who's looking for a hotel destination or a holiday destination than a beach full of rubbish. But it also injures and kills wildlife and has the potential to transport chemical contaminants that may pose a threat to human health. Indonesia and Australia have a real shared interest in tackling the problem of marine plastic waste. A really good example of this is southern bluefin tuna and several other fish species of major economic significance for both Indonesia and Australia, which spawn off the tropical waters just off of the coast of Java and Bali. And then they travel along the Australian coast as they mature. Any major ecosystem changes through plastic accumulation in Indonesian or Australian waters, from the smothering of key food sources to the buildup of toxic chemicals through ingestion, threaten the commercial fishing industries in both countries, risking trillions of rupiah in direct and indirect revenue and the livelihoods of many thousands of people. So this is a real example of why it's squarely in our mutual interest to address this issue. The Arafura Sea that borders both Indonesia and Australia also has some of the highest densities of derelict fishing gear or ghost nets in the world. These plastic ghost nets have major implications for stock depletion of Australian and Indonesian fisheries, as well as mortality to non-target species, including marine turtles and other species of conservation concern. They also pose hazards to other vessels due to fouling of propellers or fishing gear, and they impose costs for removal on our public agencies or other bodies. So partnering to address this ghost nest issue is also strategically important for both Indonesia and Australia. Cooperation on marine plastic is already a top priority at the highest levels in both Indonesia and Australia. President Joko Widodo has set an ambitious target to reduce marine plastic waste by 70% by 2025 and has issued a presidential decree mandating the implementation of a national action plan for the handling of marine waste. He's reaffirmed his commitment to action and urged other world leaders to follow suit at meetings of the G20 Leaders Summit and again at the ASEAN Leaders Summit in June last year. And this really aligns closely with Australia's own ambitions that are reflected in the mission of our National Science Agency, CSIRO, to end plastic waste. So at a meeting between Indonesia's President and Australia's Prime Minister in February this year, back when we could all still travel, both formally committed to creating an Indonesia-Australia Plastics Innovation Hub to address marine plastics as a key bilateral issue. And this announcement was backed by a pledge of support from Indonesia's Ministry of Research and Technology and their Agency for Research and Innovation. And we're currently working with our Indonesian partners to co-design this hub to ensure that we're targeting our efforts to where they can have greatest impact. Can I get you to change the slide, please? So one of the most important considerations when we talk about impact is measurement. So as the renowned scientist Lord Kelvin, who's best known for inventing the International System for Measuring Temperature, is often quoted as saying, if you cannot measure it, you cannot improve it. So that's why CSIRO has developed world-renowned capability to measure, analyse and map plastic pollution. It's why we undertook a national survey around the entire continent of Australia, looking at the sources, amounts and type of plastic pollution around the entire country. And it's why we're taking on the world's largest plastic pollution survey, working with countries across the globe, including Indonesia. As part of this global plastic losses project, CSIRO has partnered with Udayana University to measure, analyse and map plastic pollution in Bali. Researchers have used a combination of field sampling and mathematical modelling to make predictions of debris in areas where surveys were not conducted. This project's provided a definitive baseline measure of Bali's inland, coastal and marine plastic waste, which is a great start. But as we know, Indonesia is a huge archipelago with more than 17,000 islands and the world's second longest coastline. So as co-chair of the Metrics Task Force of Indonesia's National Plastics Action Partnership, CSIRO is working with a whole range of partners towards developing a better understanding of the national picture. Regular measurement of plastic leakage into the environment is key to enable researchers to monitor coastal and ocean health and to assess the effectiveness of interventions to address plastic leakage. And citizen science can play a key role. In conducting our national baseline for Australia, for example, CSIRO worked with over 7,000 school kids as citizen scientists, and the data that they collected made a really important contribution to our understanding of the overall picture. To support citizen science practitioners, we developed a whole suite of resources to make it easy to conduct a plastic leakage survey, including the handbook which you see on screen. So before our next workshop, we'd like you to take a look at the handbook and our resources page and have a think about where you could survey plastic debris in your local area. It could be a river, a beach, or somewhere inland. Thanks very much, and we look forward to your contribution.
Synergy with the work that you do in the CSIRO and our Bridge Partnership Schools. Some of the points that I noted down was the idea of mutual interest, collaboration, cooperation, and the idea of working together, particularly through citizenship science. So thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing the projects that our students come up with. At the end of today's session, Nicole will be sending out that research for you, so it's well worth a read, some really great data in there, as Amelia touched on. I'd like to now hand over to another one of our fantastic advocates we'll be engaging, Eva, who is one of the co-founders and the Chief Operating Officer at Copernic. Welcome, all the way from Indonesia.
Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Eva. I am the co-founder of Copernic, a Bali-based organization, and we focus on finding solutions to a whole range of social and environmental challenges across Indonesia. And for the past 3 years, one of the key issues that we've been working on is plastic pollution. It's become a really huge problem in Indonesia as well as globally. And together with Robbie, who's here, we co-created the Pulau Plastik campaign to work on solving this massive problem. So Pulau Plastik is a campaign that uses music, video and film to increase people's understanding about the problem of single-use plastic pollution, where it ends up, how it contributes to marine plastic pollution, and how it threatens our natural and marine environments as well as our own health. And Pulau Plastik also provides really concrete steps and solutions that you can take in your daily life to reduce the use of single-use plastic, such as straws and single-use plastic bags and food packaging, and we provide a range of alternatives. So there are 4 episodes of Pulau Plastik, and we invite you to watch 2 of the episodes as part of this program in the next 2 weeks. And we really look forward to answering your questions and hearing about what you thought about the Pulau Plastik episodes and the problem of plastic pollution more broadly when we meet again in our next session. So now I'll hand over to Robbie, who is the other co-creator of Pulau Plastik. He's the host of Pulau Plastik as well, and he's also a rock star. So after Robbie's introduction, we'll show you a trailer of Pulau Plastik. Robbie.
Ya, makasih Ewa. Halo semuanya, salam dari Bali. Saya Robbie, salam kenal. Saya dan Ewa, kita mendirikan Pulau Plastik, kampanye Pulau Plastik, sebuah kampanye yang berupa film. Itu adalah gabungan daripada film, video, dan musik untuk berbagi solusi dan juga permasalahan-permasalahan yang terjadi di Indonesia. Karena awalnya, itu kenapa kita tertarik bikin Pulau Plastik, kalau saya pribadi, itu saya sebenarnya terkejut gara-gara ada statement bilang bahwa Indonesia itu sebagai negara kedua terbesar di dunia penyumbang sampah plastik ke lautan. Nah, saya sendiri sebagai orang Indonesia yang sadar bahwa kekayaan Indonesia itu ada di lautan. Terus dengan spirit saya sebagai orang Indonesia yang selama ini kita tahu bahwa nenek moyangku seorang pelaut. Nah, saya di sini sebagai warga negara Indonesia yang berusaha menjadi warga negara yang baik, berusaha untuk melindungi kekayaan Indonesia, merasa bahwa permasalahan sampah plastik, terutama mikroplastik di lautan sudah sangat urgent. Terus gimana caranya kita bisa terlibat dengan cara yang kita bisa, baik dalam skala individu, rumah tangga, hingga skala nasional. Dan kita tahu permasalahan ini kompleks, yang bisa kita lakukan adalah duduk satu meja berbagi solusi semua elemen antara pemerintah, korporasi, dan seluruh masyarakat. Dengan solusi-solusi lokal. Kalau di Pulau Plastik ini ada 4 seri, kita berbicara tentang Bali, bagaimana Bali bisa memapping kebijakan lokal, dan saya yakin semua daerah di Indonesia ataupun di dunia punya solusinya sendiri-sendiri apabila mereka memberdayakan kebijakan lokal. Dan di Pulau Plastik sendiri, ini kita berbagi apa saja yang sudah dilakukan oleh Bali dan juga inisiatif-inisiatif setempat, dan harapannya kita meminta pendapat dari kalian. Dan tentunya harus nonton dulu film Pulau Plastik, 4 seri ini, dan kita minta opini dari teman-teman semuanya setelah menonton. Ada trailernya yang akan kita putar segera. Selamat menikmati.
So if we could go to the next slide.
Saya Gede Robbie. Sudah 20 tahun saya bersama band saya Navikula, berawal dari Pulau Bali, musik telah membawa kami berkeliling Indonesia, bahkan keliling dunia untuk mengkampanyekan isu-isu global seperti korupsi, penebangan hutan, perubahan iklim, dan sampah plastik.
Untuk yang non-organik, saya taruh di sini semua.
Nah, ini yang mungkin masyarakat belum tahu betul mengenai dampak dari pemakaian plastik ke lingkungan, bahkan nanti mungkin balik juga ke meja makan mereka.
Dan ini mungkin datang dari rumah Anda.
Siapa yang tadi buang ini di jalan ini pasti kalau nakal.
Berapa tahun ini hancur di alam? Ratusan tahun ya? Kita pikir kita buang, hanyut ke laut, hilang. Ternyata enggak. Dimakan, masuk ke tubuhnya ikan, balik lagi ke kita ya. Itu namanya karma pala di Bali.
Isu sampah dan plastik sebenarnya bukan hal yang baru. Tapi karena masih sedikit orang yang peduli, maka hal ini menjadi darurat. Dan waktunya untuk beraksi adalah sekarang, atau Bali akan menjadi Pulau Plastik.
Great. So that was the trailer, and over the next 2 weeks, before we meet again, we invite you to watch 2 of the episodes of the Pulau Plastik series and really look forward to hearing your thoughts and answering any questions that you might have.
Ya, jadi tonton dulu filmnya dan kita menunggu opini dari teman-teman setelah menonton film tersebut.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robbie and Eva. I've been lucky enough to been able to have a sneak peek of the documentary, and it's fascinating, such a great insight, and I really like the idea of that intersection between the arts but also activism. So we can see already through our advocates where the idea of STEAM comes in. We've got the science, the technology, the engineering, a great focus on the arts and mathematics. So I'd like now to share an example that I've contributed through the Asia Education Foundation. And for those people that are joining us online, live on YouTube, feel free to write your answers in the comments. And for those people that are watching it at a later date, feel free to pause the video. I'd like you to think of this question right now. What do all of these products on screen have in common? So the first one, we've got a jacket, a Patagonia jacket. We've got a fashionable umbrella. We've got some skateboards. We've got a brand new pair of Nikes. And we've got what is the Japan Olympics, was to be 2020, but now 2021 uniform for participants. So I'll give you about 5 or 10 seconds just to think and ponder, what do all those items have in common? Okay, Nicole, if we could move on to the next slide. The answer actually was all those products were used upcycling plastic bottles to turn them into those products. So the idea of single-use plastics, people have already come up with innovative and creative solutions to solve those problems. Now, some of you might know an educator by the name of Sir Ken Robinson, and he was very much interested in this idea of creativity in schools and divergent thinking. So not just the yes and the no answers, the black and the white binary, but encouraging kids to be really creative. So a recent activity that I did was based around a concept that he used to do with schools and teachers around a paperclip. So he would ask people, how many uses can you come up with beyond the literal paperclip? So I did this activity with some schools in Queensland recently, grade 5, and I said, what are some of the tangible things that you could make with a plastic bottle? So something in your classroom, something at your home, something in your local community, rather than just throwing it out. And as we saw Robbie explained, going into our land, our waterways and polluting the environment and potentially harming animals. So they came up with over 100 ideas in less than 5 minutes. So if we look at our next slide, this is how we link it to the curriculum. Some of those ideas, for example, science, a student came up with the idea of turning it into a composter. For music, they came up with a maraca, so a percussion instrument. For sport, students mentioned using a soccer ball. For art, there were quite a few artistic ideas, but one person mentioned using the art as jewelry. For engineering, making a toy car. And for mathematics, things like a rain catcher, so measuring the amount of rainfall in your local area, and also using it as a measuring cup. So another combination of maths and also science. So my little task for you is a little challenge. Over the next 2 weeks, I want to see if you can use a plastic water bottle and upcycle it. So I don't want you to go out and buy more materials. I want to see what you have at your house or in your school. And if you can create an invention or an item that you can share with us on Flipgrid or perhaps on camera at our next session in a couple of weeks' time. So some of those examples you might see on the board is a pot plant. We've got a bird feeder. That third one is actually a percussion instrument. So maracas, which make different sounds. We've got just an art project, which is a rocket ship, a piggy bank, so where you can store your money, and some really great things that you might want to use in your art classroom. So a pencil case holder or something that can hold staples and paper clips and rubber bands. And finally, the last one is actually a sensory bottle. So this really hammers home the idea of plastic bottles and the oceans. So inside this little plastic bottle is the metaphor of an ocean. So there's some sand, there's some water, and there's some fish. So there's just some examples, 8 examples, but if you go online, and I'm sure if you did a divergent activity like I did with the students in Queensland, there'll be countless ideas that you can come up with for turning, as we say, the pollution into some kind of solution. So one of the ways that we're going to share our thoughts and our collaborations is using an online program by the name of Flipgrid. So Flipgrid, as you can see in the example just there, is a great tool for both teachers and, of course, students for collaboration and discussions, and to also talk to each other and give feedback on our work through responses. So you can use this on a phone, or you can also use this on a computer. If you go to the website, we've already posted a number of prompts there, encouraging you to submit some responses or also to ask us some questions. So if you enter the website, and again, Nicole will send this out through the email later today, you can watch the videos, and if you click the plus button, you can either record a video live to the camera, or if you've done one previously, you can upload that and you can edit it and you can do text or whatever you like to overlay it. So we're encouraging you to submit your responses to Amelia's survey, some of the things that you might have found interesting, some questions you might have for Amelia. We're encouraging you to watch the documentary and some questions you might want to ask to Eva or Robbie, and use the medium of Flipgrid to do that. So some of the next steps we'd like to do before we meet you once again on the 26th of November is to watch those documentary episodes of Palau Plastic, to read through the CSIRO survey resources, and as I just mentioned, have a go at the upcycling water bottle activity. It would be great, and it's so lucky that we have a platform to share this across Australia and Indonesia. We've got lots of people watching this live YouTube right now to post our ideas and our thoughts and our questions on Flipgrid. As I said, we're very lucky to have this unprecedented access to some of our advocates in the CSIRO, Kopernik and Palau Plastic. So let's use this opportunity to ask them questions and see how we can enhance our school partnerships, but also come up with tangible and real life examples that address some of these global issues in our schools and community. So our next session will be taking place on Thursday, the 26th of November, and you can see the different time zones that are mentioned there. This session will be run on Zoom and it will be highly interactive. So we really look forward to hearing the voices of teachers and students. We've got a special Q&A with Amelia, Eva, and Robbie. So we'd love you guys to submit those questions. What do you want to know? And that can be anything on the work that you've seen. It might be music about Robbie. It could be science. It could be how do you make a documentary and get your message across. Completely up to you. We're also blessed to have a very, very special live performance all the way from Bali from Robbie and playing our special song Sampa, which I'm sure will be a hit. And as a group, we'll be creating and sharing some teacher resources that you can then take back to your classroom and develop these projects in your classrooms. So thank you everyone for joining us today. It's been wonderful to hear from our different advocates, and just a couple of the wonderful activities that you can touch on in the next 2 weeks. As I said, this project is all about collaboration and synergy and working together. So I'd now like to hand over to Farah and Jess for some closing comments. Thanks everyone.
Thanks, Brendan. I'm sure you're all incredibly excited, as I am, to dive into this. Just to follow up on Brendan's thanks, I did want to, on behalf of the Bridge School Partnerships Program, really thank our esteemed guests and collaborators today, both Amelia, Eva, and Robbie, as well as Brendan. I think this educator workshop is really exploring something different within Bridge Partnerships. We know that sustainability and STEAM is a really keen interest of our educators and students, and I think it's an absolute pleasure for us to be doing this and really supporting the work that the three organisations do by giving exciting opportunities for Bridge School Partnerships. Once again, a big thanks to our funders DFAT. We couldn't do it without you, so thank you very much. I did want to say, if you have any questions about Flipgrid, about the approach for the educator workshops, reach out to the team either in Jakarta or Melbourne. We're happy to be here to help. But I really look forward to seeing your Flipgrid. So I'm going to jump on later today and maybe post a few. It's a great opportunity for you to trial a different type of technology that I know people have used in their partnerships previously. My final point before I hand over to Farah is, as Brendan mentioned, we have a lovely surprise performance in the next event, but just putting it in your mind that we're very lucky that we'll actually be playing the recording, or a recording, of Sampa by Robbie and his band Navikula as we fade out of this live stream. So if you want to hang around and listen to it, please do. I know it's on Spotify because I was listening to it earlier today, but have a listen, and we really look forward to hearing all of your insights and suggestions and seeing how this can support your Bridge Partnerships moving forward. Farah, over to you.
Thank you, Jess. Sekali lagi terima kasih Bapak Ibu dan teman-teman siswa sekalian. Semoga tadi sesinya menarik dan menginspirasi. Seperti saya juga terinspirasi jadi ngumpulin botol plastik di rumah untuk segera diolah. Dan semoga saya juga berharap bisa melihat ide-ide tambahan dari Flipgrid. Untuk saya, Brid sendiri bisa membantu untuk nggak cuma saling belajar, tapi juga membantu komunitas. Seperti temanya tadi, Stempati. Sekali lagi terima kasih dan sampai jumpa.
Sampai jumpa.
Sampah. Sampah, 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 sampah. Sampah, 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 sampah. Sampah, 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 sampah. Coba pikir sebentar, kawan. Sampah darimu bisa kemana-mana. Coba rasa sebentar, kawan. Sedikit saja bisa pengaruhi dunia. Racuni air kau bunuh semua kunang-kunang. Cahaya di gelap malam. Dahulu bumi ini pernah indah, karena Tuhan tak menciptakan sampah. Mungkinkah bumi ini tetap indah? Mungkin bisa jika kita berubah. Sampah, 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 sampah. Satu hal yang kita mengerti, bahwa kita tidak hidup sendiri. Tapi sering kita ingkari, hanya karena kita tidak peduli. Racuni udara kau buat gerah matahari, panasnya di sepanjang hari. Dahulu bumi ini pernah indah, karena Tuhan tak menciptakan sampah. Mungkinkah bumi ini tetap indah? Mungkin bisa jika kita berubah. Dahulu bumi ini pernah indah, karena Tuhan tak menciptakan sampah. Mungkinkah bumi ini tetap indah? Mungkin bisa jika kita berubah. Sampah, 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 sampah.